Today we're going to talk about licensing. In the last video that I did on the Futo channel, I was talking about the old license that we had, which was a temporary license that had what I so affectionately refer to as the rug pull clause. Because let's be real, there's no other way to interpret that. It says that we can revoke access to the license, we can change it, and we can revoke access to the code at any given time. This goes against what I've discussed on my own YouTube channel for 13 years. And if I saw that in there with any other company, I would chew them to pieces. So how can I not do that when I work here? And the answer to that is I can't, which is why I called it bullshit in that particular video. The reason that that was there is because we wanted to come up with a license that allowed people to view the source code, use it, fork it, do what you want with the application. But if you wanted to use it commercially, we wanted to come up with a system whereby we had the right to not ask to be compensated, but demand to be compensated. And we wanted to come up with a proper framework of that. And we also wanted to release that application last September. So we created the application with a temporary license. That license should have been there for a day. Not even. And it wound up being there for 9 months. In that video, I showed the revised license, which does not have those terms in it, and explains in no uncertain terms that that will never be there again. Now there's a second question, which is, okay, I understand that you want to have a license that allows you to monetize if a large multi-billion-dollar company uses your software. Why are you calling it open source? And that's an excellent question. And what I will usually say in response to that is, that's not my decision to make. I work at a company where I have the right to disagree with my boss. The only reason that I even work here is because this company is very similar to Rossman Repair Group, where people can walk up to me and say, I don't think what you're doing makes sense. I don't think you should do that, and they still have a job. And this is a great company for the fact that we can do the same here. I have gone into my boss's office probably once a week for the past year and kind of poked at this particular topic. There are two different ways to discuss this issue. The first is the moral and ethical framework, and the second is the utilitarian framework. And for me, I am personally in favor of not calling it open source unless you have the right to use it and distribute it and fork it as you please. Our license allows you to fork the code. It allows you to use the code. It allows you to essentially have an unlimited free trial period, modify the code, give that code to your friends. But if you're going to be using it commercially, it requires that you pay us. We don't want a company bundling our software on 1 million devices and then paying us a one-time fee of $5 and saying, well, you know, that doesn't work. We don't want that relationship. We don't want the FFmpeg Google relationship where they make $70 billion in net profit and, you know, FFmpeg gets Google Summer of Code. We want a more fair exchange of value. At the same time, people want to know why we're calling that open source. There are two ways to discuss this. The first is the moral and ethical framework, and the second is the utilitarian part of it. For me, I am on the side of not calling it open source unless it is one of the licenses that the community calls open source en masse. I do not care about the OSI's definition of open source, nor do I care about the OSI. Me caring about the OSI's definition of open source would kind of be like me asking you to trust repair.org, iFixit, or Repair Preservation Group's definition of open source. These types of words are not defined by a nonprofit. They're not defined by an individual. They're defined by a community. I care about the community's definition of it. And the community has made it very obviously clear over the past 22 years that open source means that there are not restrictions on commercial use of the code. You may have to, depending on the license, make some of your code open source as well as a result of using this code, but there are no well understood open source licenses that a majority of the community would call open source, from my understanding, that have any sort of commercial restrictions on them like this. For this alone, I'm in favor of calling it something other than open source. And then there's just the utilitarian framework of it. Forget about the morals and ethics. Just pretend that there's no moral or ethical issue with trying to redefine a community term. My job here is to hire people. I found the developers of Grayjay. We hired them, and we storyboarded what the project should look like. I hired the developer of the keyboard. I hired the people that make image. I mean, for me to be able to have credibility when I email somebody and not have them say, screw those people, we have to have a good reputation. So regardless of the moral or ethical framework, simply from a selfish perspective and point of view, I have always been in favor of calling the software something that the community is happy with. I think that we're offering a lot of really great things here. We're investing millions and millions of dollars into software that you can essentially use as an infinite free trial with no spyware, no malware, no adware. We give millions of dollars away in donations on a regular basis. For me, to see the amount of goodwill that is created when you give millions and millions of dollars to all these different open source foundations, to Signal, to Tor, to Calyx, to Graphene, to $1 million to Repair Preservation Group, and never even ask what they did with it. All of this good stuff get outweighed by this term, when using a different term other than open source has absolutely no cost whatsoever. There's all these negatives reputationally, but there's no benefits. In my time here, I've been an advocate to do this in a different way. And we're finally at the point where things are going to be done in a different way. And I'm quite happy with that. I also want to give Aaron a chance to explain his perspective as well, because I believe it's a perspective that's kind of understandable. He did not really follow all the open source licensing things. And one of the things that he showed me was a picture from Richard Stallman's article on open source that actually kind of gave me an idea of where he's coming from. It says practical differences between free software and open source software. Practical differences between free software and open source. In practice, open source stands for criteria a little looser than those of free software. As far as we all know, all existing released free software source code would qualify as open source. Nearly all open source software is free software, but there are exceptions. First, some open source licenses are too restrictive, so they do not qualify as free licenses. For example, OpenWhatCom is non-free because its license does not allow making a modified version and using it privately. Fortunately, few programs use such licenses. Richard Stallman, very obviously in this context, much prefers free software to open source software, and he does not like limitations at all. However, I can understand how somebody reading this who only has a cursory understanding of licenses could read this and figure, okay, free software, Libre software is not how I would advertise my software, but since I'm allowing you to see the source code and I'm only placing restrictions on this particular commercial use, that fits in the definition of open source as per what he read. The point that I've tried to make here is that this is not a definition that Richard Stallman came up with or that the OSI came up with where you're going against one individual or you're agreeing with one individual based on your interpretation of a blog. This is a community definition. This word has a definition that goes beyond any one individual. If OSI or Richard Stallman tomorrow were to redefine open source software as anything you could see the source code in, but in order to use it, you have to have a Microsoft account, they would not change the definition of it. If that were to occur, the community would immediately throw OSI under a bus faster than the members of Freenode threw them under a bus before they moved over to Libera Chat. This is a community-owned definition. It's not a definition that is owned by one individual. And because most of the community understands open source to mean one thing, to argue the semantics there and go back and forth, in my opinion, has all downside and no upside. It's not going to improve our software. It's not going to make us better developers. It's not going to make what we're doing here better or get us closest to our goal. But it will alienate people, and it will alienate the very type of people that are sending first-class mail envelopes with no return address with a $10 bill in it saying, "Thank you, love Grayjay," when there's no DRM and they could have used it for free anyway. From a moral and ethical point of view, I don't think it makes sense to utilize terminology that most people believe to be one thing when it is something else. But most importantly, admittedly selfishly, from a utilitarian point of view, I want this place to have the best reputation possible. When I reach out to a programmer, I may never know that the reason that they don't email me back is because they read a post somewhere from somebody that they know, that they trust, saying, "Don't trust these people." The person I reached out to may not even know why their trusted friend or advisor or coworker said that. They may just trust them and move on anyway. And it may prevent the conversation from occurring. So, admittedly, my reason for wanting to change this and the reason that I've been very adamant at the company internally about changing it, part of me wanting to change that for the past 9 months was for selfish reasons. I care about my reputation, and I most certainly care about this company's reputation and its ability to recruit people and not get ghosted by the very people that would be developing amazing software. I recruited the image team. I recruited the Grayjay team. I recruited the team for the Futo keyboard. And every time I spoke to these people, one of the things that made it easy is they actually trusted our reputation. And my argument has always been, we have done way too much to build a reputation to lose it over some semantic word like this that has no effect on the software that we create. We have given away millions upon millions of dollars to all different types of organizations. The people developing Signal, people creating open source wheelchairs, projects like Image that were getting small funding on GitHub before that are getting millions upon millions of dollars, and admittedly, my own nonprofit that got $1 million from a man that's never once asked where that money's gone to. And my argument has been simple. Is it really worth throwing away all of that goodwill over a term? I've always believed the answer to be no. What I like about this place is I work at a place where you're actually allowed to disagree with your boss. People can voice their concerns and be listened to. I have not had a job for 17 years, and when people hear that I have a job, they're like, how? What? I'm as surprised as you are. The reason that I can do that here is because I work at a company that's similar to mine with regards to my employees being able to walk up to me and say, "Louis, you are an idiot. You did X, Y, and Z. Why?" They will do that. They will do that regularly. And it's one of the reasons that we're one of the best rated repair shops in the country. On Google, over 1,700 reviews, 4.9 stars. Because I'm lucky enough to be surrounded by people that will tap me on the shoulder rather than tell me what I want to hear. And here, Aaron is not the type of person that has such a large ego that you must tell him what he wants to hear. I can walk into his office on a regular basis and tell him the opposite of what he wants to hear. and often I do. Sometimes I'm wrong, sometimes I'm right. And what I appreciate is he's the type of person that's actually open to listening. Aaron hates doing software inside of a browser. He was trying to get web apps to work in Linux in the mid-90s. Like, I get it. And he has put several $100,000s of funding into people that are making applications that are somewhat aligned with what we're doing that are in a browser. He's open to being wrong, and he's open to working with people he disagrees with, which I really appreciate. We've had some conversations here, and we're not going to be using the term open source to define our software anymore, unless it's software that uses a license that is traditionally defined as such. We do not require that every piece of software we create follow this license. We have 3 pieces of software that use OSI-approved licenses that are traditionally considered open source, and we likely will have more projects like that into the future. There are other projects that use our license, and from now on, we're going to be referring to those as source first, not open source. We're going to respect the community's definition of this word. I think it's the right thing to do. At the end of the day, we want to win, which means doing things the right way. That being said, I'm going to bring Aaron out so that you can hear from him for about an hour, and I'm also going to cover my face with a giant logo because I have not slept in 2 days, and as a result, I look horrible. You think I look horrible now, but you're never going to see what I looked like before because I'm going to have a nice little Futo logo right over my face. That being said, let's get to Aaron. Remember the last time I did a live stream with you and you said something along the lines of, should I throw this person under a bus? And I'm like, we're live. I forget who you were throwing under. Oh, you did it again. All right, so today we're going to be discussing a couple of things. We're going to be going over a contentious issue of licensing. First issue that I believe we had was that our original temporary license had what I've been calling, not so affectionately, the rug pull clause, which says that we can revoke access to the code at any time, and it doesn't even specify whether or not we can revoke access to the code, we can change this license at any time, take the license away, and that didn't specify whether or not you had even paid for the software. Anybody would have that. Now, when I would read that, if I were reading that on my channel from essentially any other company, I would look at this and I would say, I don't want to let the person who wrote this pet Mr. Clinton.
I don't think anybody even looked at that specific clause. I don't even think anybody really looked at it.
I looked at it. I looked at it.
Oh, you did?
I read it to you.
I didn't look at it.
Yeah, I read it to you every week. Would say, get this shit out of here.
Oh, well, okay. When it first went up, I don't think anybody looked at it. And then after that, it was like, okay, we got to get the good one before we don't want to keep changing it. I think that's what happened there.
The idea was to make a license. Yeah, the whole thing. The things that we had to work into that were how the commercial access thing would work, what would happen if we actually went under as a company, all these other things.
And we fixed it. It took less than 9 months to fix it. That's not too bad.
I think that I think was the most egregious thing. The second one here, which is the most contentious issue, is calling it open source when you're not allowed to use it for commercial use without paying. People would say that means it's called source available. There's another dude that came up with fair code. You kept using the term open source. So, like, before I give any of my opinion or ask questions from them, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I kind of wrote a whole thing. Like, we should probably link that somewhere about kind of explaining this. We'll link it for you after. But I'll go ahead and just repeat what I wrote down. I didn't even know, it's actually, I didn't understand. I did not know that there was a whole bunch of people who were very, very picky about the definition of open source. I have done research since, and I found Richard Stallman's thing, and I actually agreed with Richard Stallman where he says the obvious meaning of the word open source is that you can see the source code. And I think that's pretty much the prevalent view of everyone I knew back in the 90s when they were talking about this stuff. I didn't really follow those debates back then. I believe at some point the OSI was formed, and they decided that they wanted to get very, very picky about this definition, and they started getting more specific, and then they lost their trademark and all that. So I have the question. That's a Stallman thing right there. Yeah. Even Stallman's the obvious meaning to most people when they hear the word open source is that you can see the source code. So I was going by that. Find the word obvious. So just as Richard Stallman was trying to change the meaning of the word to people, I believe about this time, but he was conceding that the obvious meaning was, there it is. You can look at the source code.
The obvious meaning for its expression open source software is you can look at the source code. Indeed, most people misunderstand open source software this way. The clear term for that meaning is source available.
Yeah, so if most people understand something some way, and Richard Stallman wants them to understand it a different way, I don't understand why he's kind of overruling everybody everybody's most common understanding at that time.
Yeah. So like
Yeah.
my point on this was I like disregard. I didn't even know the OSI existed. I've known what open source software was since I bought SUSE Linux in 2002, and I figured that like I don't know the difference between every single license, but I've always understood it to mean that I can take the code, I can use it in my own program, I don't have to pay somebody, and certain licenses require that if I use their code, then I have to make that part of my code open source. But like the point that I've been trying to make is that that word, similar to right to repair, has like a community definition. So right to repair.org does not define right to repair, and neither do I. Like if I tried to change right to repair to mean something else, the community would just toss me under the bus.
So I guess that's what I didn't realize. The OSI has been somewhat successful at changing people's perception of the word open source, or the words open source.
I think that word existed before then, though. Like, I think that's a community word. So
Right.
if OSI tried to change my point is, if OSI tried to change the definition of open source, the community would collectively throw them under a bus. The only reason that OSI even like has some authority there is because the community and them seem to agree on the definition.
It depends to the degree to which they changed it. I think if the OSI said, hey, we're going to start allowing, what's the word, use of endeavors, like fields of endeavor. If we are going to allow some limitations to fields of endeavor in licenses, I don't think people would even notice if they kind of added a few minor changes to fields of endeavor to their right now they have, you are not allowed to restrict at all fields of endeavor on your license. This is such a really specific point that like pretty much. I mean, I don't know. Like, I only know about this now because we've been like looking at it so carefully the last 9 months. Most programmers I've ever talked to, it is just like, what's going on? Oh, it's open source. I can see the source code, right? They don't even get into this fields of endeavor nuance. So that's kind of the way. I guess that's where I disagree with you. I don't think. I think like the number of people who would like throw a fit if the OSI decided to allow some limited restrictions in fields of endeavor is maybe less than 1,000.
Well, like this is an example from my industry because I'm not a programmer, so like, I could tell you my opinion on that after. In my industry, there's this company called Inventec, and they make flux for soldering. It's called Amtech 559 V2TF, and it smells like a pine tree. It's beautiful. Everybody loves it. And one day they did a rug pull, and they started selling ASM as V2TF. ASM does not smell like a pine tree. ASM smells like shit. And this other company came out that actually started selling the one that smells like a pine tree. And they were calling it Amtech. And they got shut down by Inventec because Inventec owned the trademark. The general community doesn't care about Inventec. They don't care about their trademarks. They don't care about anything. They wanted V2TF that smells like pine tree. So when Inventec sued that company, everybody threw Inventec under a bus, including me. Like there are some things that I think you could technically have a definition of it. You could like that company technically has a trademark, but like one of my mentors, Eli, the computer guy, said, you can be 100% right and 100% fired at the same time. So like my point was, it seems like enough people see this as a community definition that open source essentially means use it however you want, with some licenses saying if you use open source code in your project, you have to open source that part of yours. But like if that's a community definition, then we're not poking a stick. Like whether you like the OSI or don't, I'm neutral. I didn't even know they existed until months ago. I've known what open source is in the definition of it, but I didn't know about the OSI until then. Like it's a community definition. So like we're essentially poking and pissing off the type of people that would send us $10 in an envelope to buy Grayjay when we offer it for technically infinite free trial period already. Like almost everybody in I don't know a lot of programmers because I'm not a programmer, but even people I know that are not programmers know that like open source means you could use it, and if you use it commercially, like you don't have to pay for it. So I completely understand and respect us saying fuck that. If we make software like FFmpeg, Google can't make $70 billion a year off of it. Like I don't mind that, but I've said my point has been, we've essentially given millions upon millions of dollars to all sorts of GPL, AGPL, MIT, Apache licensed software. We give away hundreds of thousands of millions of dollars a year in donations to all these companies and all these nonprofits. We take projects like Image, like that are, surviving off of donations. So here's millions of dollars to keep doing the shit that you're doing. And like, there's this scale reputationally. It's being undone by this one thing that I think is like, why?
We do want, I mean, I know you always say, don't trust us, but no, we do want you to trust us, and we don't want to be lying to you. And to the extent that we were lying to some people, or people thought they were lying to them, when we said open sources, that's why we don't want to use the word open source anymore, because if it's, 1,000 people, that's still enough people that we don't want to be lying to them. If it's,
I think it's, I would say it's more. I think most of there's an intersection. The type of people that are going to use this app and then mail us $10 of cash in an envelope because, well, A, they want to pay for something that they could use for free, and B, they do not have a return address on the envelope because of that privacy conscious. Those are the type of people that know that, and like that's the core customer base. Like there's all this shit that we do that like nobody else would do that reputationally, and then like I feel like this one thing.
Yeah. Okay. Look, if it's like 10,000, it could be 10,000, it could be 1,000, it could be 100,000.
Because like when I say trust, how have I spent the $1 million you gave Repair Preservation Group?
I believe you spent it well. I do not know exactly what you've done.
You have no clue. Like
yes,
you've never even asked. You have no idea. Like for all you know, I've spent it all on hookers and blow, and that's why I'm like uppity all the time. But like the thing is, my point is, I know whether or not I can trust you based on certain things, but they have no idea. And like I tell people every single day, I tell them not to trust me. I say like trust the actions, trust the policies, trust what we do. So I think the point is, everybody when it comes to a billionaire, people see billionaires in a certain way. And, no offense, I do too. So like I mean,
they should. We're mostly douchebags. Yeah,
mostly.
Most of the billionaires are douchebags, or they're not douchebags. They're just lame. They're lame.
The point is, everybody when they see this, everybody's waited. Like every time you do something good, they just assume that the movie is longer and that the villain plot is going to be like 3 hours in instead of an hour in. So everybody's kind of like waiting for a rug pull. What is the rug pull moment going to be? When is he gave 100K to Signal? Okay, gave 3 million. Okay, when is the rug pull coming? And when they see that we're calling something open source, the community has this definition, and we're using it anyway. Like they're like, that's the rug pull. And okay. Yeah, and like the reason that I've been arguing against this is I don't want people to believe that there's a reason for the rug pull.
I mean, I can't see how we would benefit anyway.
Well, what, by changing the definition of the word? Yeah, that's my point. Is that I don't think there's any calling it something other than open source. Like I don't see the benefit, which is why I just like something else just makes sense. Like free code, source first, source available.
Especially like if you are right and there are 100,000 people, I don't know, how many people do you think there are who care about this in the world? Like there's only like 30 million programmers in the world or something. So the percentage of programmers, like I've programmed a lot of code and I did not know this. So if it's 1% of programmers know about this, then that's what 300,000 programmers.
I thought that
300,000 people.
My argument is there's no benefit to calling it open source when the community has one definition of it, but there's all this downside of reputational harm and pissing people off. So like it's pissing people off without like it's going to piss a lot of people off for something that doesn't benefit us at all. I think there will be people that are pissed off at this license. I don't care about them. I care about the people that are saying like you're taking my word. If we make our own word. Because this is still fair. Like, again, you can use the software. It's an unlimited free trial. You can see what it does. Millions of dollars are put into the development of it. This is not like a weekend project. We take input from the community, features requests, all these different feature requests. A lot of them are from people that haven't paid for the software. And, we give you the server if you have the clients. Like, I'm okay with saying if for commercial use, pay for it. But I would just, like, again, having another word just seems to make it a lot simpler and happier. Embrace, extend, extinguish. So I think what people assumed is that you're doing all this good stuff, because really, like, nobody's doing this. That, if anything, the reason that they think this is a scam is like, this is too good to be true. Who the fuck would do this with them? Like, nobody does this when they have this money. Like, nobody uses their fuck you money to essentially, like, they invested in.
Yeah,
I don't know. They invested in Apple.
I mean, that is the embrace. Embrace. I was, I did actually follow that quite a bit because I was a huge. I mean, the reason why I started, why I wound up in Silicon Valley was, I was really excited by the capabilities of Java and perhaps the potential of Java to unseat Microsoft with their monopoly at that time. And so I made Yahoo Games just because I wanted Linux users to actually have a nice way to play multiplayer games and not be stuck on. Microsoft had just bought one of the competitors to Yahoo Games. And I was like, oh, well, that sucks. They're going to make that stop working on Macintosh, and it's never going to work on Linux. So the funny thing is like, that they did. That's exactly what they did to Java. They basically tried to do that. Sun was able to stop them, but they also just sucked. So it didn't matter that Sun did not do the right job, but they did actually stop them because they owned all that all that IP around Java.
What made Sun suck? And also, you said something about, I think it was David Philo liked you because you were the only one that could get some specific thing to work in his browser on Linux.
Yeah, every single time Java ran on Linux on his browser, it was a FreeBSD. They were using FreeBSD on their desktops. Every single Java applet would crash, except for the one I wrote. But yeah, I mean, I totally, like it's not quite as overt as they obviously can't be a policy that's been emailed around at Microsoft, embrace, extend, extinguish with open source. But if you look at, I mean, I hope people know that Microsoft owns GitHub. Microsoft, I believe, owns NPM. So Microsoft is absolutely trying to, take control of open. They give so much money to the Linux Foundation. I'm not sure about the Linux Foundation, but they obviously they're on the board. They do give. I think they are involved with the OSI.
No, there was something about the thing that you were saying that bothered you was
not a great historian.
It was the 2000, no, in 2008, and this is what you read me. In an apparent effort to reform the governance, the OSI board invited 50 individuals to join a charter's members group by July 2008. Wait, oh God, they're doing the European date thing. By July 26, 2008, 42 of the original invitees had accepted the invitations, and the charter members have never been publicly revealed, and the charter's members group is communicated by way of a closed subscription mailing list.
Yeah.
And there was also so somebody asked, okay, why do you think that Microsoft has any sway over the OSI? So that's a good question. I don't know anything about the OSI,
subtle,
but you
right?
do. You follow it.
I don't really follow it either. I think the most obvious example of this is not necessarily OSI, but Mozilla, which was a nonprofit. I guess it still exists, Mozilla, but not as many people care anymore. Mozilla gets all of its money from Google. And it's just kind of clear that in this situation where you are like across the freeway from Google and all this money is pointed to Google and all your money at your little building you're in doing Firefox comes from Google. And then Google decides, oh, hey, like, why don't you come work for Google instead? Because Google knows everything about what's going on at Firefox. Then, unfortunately, most engineers were like, okay, yeah, I'll go work for Google. And that's why, Chrome wound up outpacing Firefox, in the, 15 years ago. So yeah, it's very, Futo is fiercely independent. It's funded by me with the purpose of writing, kind of trying to fix these problems that I believe big tech has created. And so,
yeah, so like it says, as of 2020, Microsoft is listed as a corporate sponsor. So I guess his point is, do you think that actually has sway? Even if Microsoft did do that, essentially, I would imagine that the community kind of owns the definition. So if the OSI said open source means that Microsoft can decide whether or not you can run open source software on your computer, and you must register a Microsoft account to do so, the community would take OSI. And I'm not saying that they're bad people. I'm saying if this occurred, if that occurred, the community, that was my point, the community would take OSI and they would throw them under a bus and they would continue going forward with the open source definition.
Than that. I mean, look at something like Wayland, right? Like, why has Wayland taken so many decades to get off the ground? Excellent. Yeah, I mean, people are using like Apple was smart enough to take, or Next was smart enough to make a good desktop very early on. And yet Linux still has fairly poor desktop support. And the reason why I believe is that, just big tech knows exactly what they're doing. They know kind of what they want to polish and what they want to make good. And they will recruit out of open source anybody who's capable of making a good desktop environment. And so the Wayland team suffers. That's kind of it's not anything like, there's no smoking guns here. It's just kind of the way the world works,
Somebody said source available, stop making it complicated. What's different between this and source available? Like that's because when I read the definitions, like the way we define it and the way source available defines it almost sounds the same.
What's wrong with calling it source first? I guess why is it so important to call it source available?
I think what he's referring to is this. Tell me if I'm wrong here.
I'm viewing this from a programmer standpoint. So part of this is that programmers need to be able to not have to work for big tech to have A programmer who polishes and makes great open source software or source first software should not have to work for big tech or work half time on their open source project and half time for Google, whatever. They should be able to make a lot of money making the software that they are writing. It's like that's their software, that's their pride and joy. If they make it great, they should make a lot of money. So that's, we want to make the programmers.
Are you familiar with the XKCD comic on standards? There are 14 standards. This is ridiculous. We're going to make our own standard. Now there's 15 standards. Like, I think the point that he was getting at when he asked that thing about the, like, okay, why not call it source available is, the best thing that I could guess at is the idea that source available open is often used to describe software that's more restrictive than ours and how you can use it.
Yeah.
But otherwise, like, it reads the same to me.
Yeah, the SKCD only matters when there's a bunch of people who haven't won. Usually one of those standards wins, and then that's the one standard.
You have a competitive nature to want to win, so you would want yours to win.
No, I want Futo to win against Apple. To me, this is not even the competition. The competition here is not with various open source things. The competition is with Google and Apple and Microsoft and all the big tech companies, and like making stuff better, getting tens of millions of users at first, 100 million users, a billion users. So that's who we want to beat. The standards that we honestly, the way that companies usually do approach standards is let's push our standard.
I would imagine so. There, with Image, the whole idea is not to compete with some other open source. It's not like we want to beat Nextcloud. Image is that if in a year or two we're not beating iCloud Photos or Google Photos, I think you would see that as kind of a fail. Or like if in a few years you want to actually hire a team of people that will make something that's better.
We've got, I think we're like at 100,000 users for our stuff now. We want that to be 1 million users, 10 million users, 100 million users.
And you've had a taste of that before with WhatsApp. Mm-hmm. Like in Dubai, you can't get Dubai. I couldn't get my laundry done without WhatsApping them like a message. It's you literally used around the world, so you've had the experience of doing that. But yeah,
I was only there 2 months, but yeah,
2 months. Not a bad paycheck. Before I'm going to read these questions while you answer this one. This is a little off tier, but I think it's a useful one. How do you reconcile a care for people being able to see the source code of their software, whether open source, source force, whatever, and video games? Because that's a mess.
That's a total
mess.
This as my background in doing video games, anti-cheat. Now, the core tenet of Futo is they're your computer, it's your tool. You should be able to do what you want with it. Whenever big tech tries to interfere with what you're doing with your computer, fuck big tech. When Apple doesn't let you install apps you want to install on your phone, fuck Apple, right? Anti-cheat is the one legitimate use of kind of like the DRM where like you don't want people to be in control of their computer, because a cheater who's in control of their computer can cheat on an online game. At the end of the day, though, like that's so unimportant compared to the serious problem of the fact that all of our computers are being taken over by companies and governments, that the gamers, like allowing people to cheat in video games is a small price to pay.
How hard? Okay, I don't know jack shit about this. How hard would it be to only have that server side? Because I don't care about cheating personally. Like if somebody wants to cheat in their game, you do you. But if you're playing multiplayer, that's where it ruins it. Like, is it impossible to do that server side? Because the amount of spying on a modern video game, I would not play it.
Look, even the anti-cheat stuff gets broken all the time. The only way to really have anti-cheat work is to actually have a live tournament where you invite the players to play. With referees making sure they're not cheating, which is great. They do that. Riot does these things with Fortnite or whatever, and all these e-game tournaments. They're great. And just you're going to find the cheaters. The top players will not get away with cheating because they're going to get invited to a tournament and then they're going to be like caught. So
let's see. Scroll. Oh, this is another one. Okay, so when it comes to the whole commercial use part, you said you can't use this for commercial in the license. So how does that work if somebody does want to use it for commercial use but they want to pay you? So like the way the license is written right now, it sounds like Google would not be able to come here and say I want to use FFmpeg for YouTube. But like obviously, if you created the next FFmpeg and Google wanted to use it and it was this license, you'd probably.
It would be just like any other software licensing. Come talk to us and license it.
Like one example is, if hypothetically, if you like the Futo keyboard application because it's not Gboard, if you're trying to create a phone with no Google stuff on it, you pretty much have two choices. You have no voice input and a keyboard that has horrible autocorrect, or you download Gboard so that you can type and speak into your phone, and now you've kind of defeated the purpose. So like if somebody wants to include the Futo keyboard on their device, like how would that type of transaction or relationship work? Or like,
I mean, typically, it would seriously be very standard. It would be, here, give us $1 phone, something like that. I don't know. It would depend. We'd probably give a discount over what, a bulk. It would be like 5,000 seats or something. They could give us $10,000 for 5,000. You can sell 5,000 phones and talk to us again when you sell more.
This is a good question. Actually, I really like this one. So it's saying you've started this license with Grayjay. This is the first program with that license, and Grayjay appears to be what is the commercial use of Grayjay that somebody would have to where you would want to restrict commercial use? Because that's a good question. Because essentially, of application for viewing videos on your phone, I don't know what the commercial application is.
I think bundling. If somebody does a really good open source set-top box or something, they could put Grayjay on it and then pay us. For like if they're charging everybody $200 for a set-top box and Grayjay's on it, they could, throw us some of that.
And there's a lot of honor system going on here because the way our digital rights management for payment is a button that says I already paid that you can click essentially regardless of whether you already paid.
Yes.
But
yes, we have DRM in our app.
I'm not religious, but whatever God you believe in, he's watching. Or she. They're watching. They're watching. You want a difficult one?
Sure.
You ready?
Sure.
Could you speak to the mandatory arbitration clause in the Circle's terms of service? I was quite shocked to see that, especially with no opt-out clause, given how much you rail against that in your own personal YouTube channel. Yes.
Oh, that's for you.
Well, listen, I develop circles. Dude, okay, is there a fucking
We haven't read it. You can just admit to them we haven't read it.
The application isn't even, we haven't even done an official release of it.
Yeah.
Which this has to get fucking crossed out before.
Yeah.
Fuck that. Yeah. I'm going to take a wild guess. To be clear, guy not in front of me. This is
why you can't believe in big conspiracies. No one is organized enough.
So hypothetically speaking, I don't let's just say hypothetically speaking, you're going back to college and you don't know how to do an MLA works cited page, and you essentially just Control C, Control V something from the internet. I would guess that this was the case of copying and pasting a privacy policy and not fully reading it because that application has not technically been full. We haven't done the full release of it. That's the guess. Regardless of what the guess is, we should get that shit out.
I mean, I'm programming, so I'll let other people.
I will get that shit
look
out of
into it. Sure,
I will get that shit out of it. Okay, yeah, that's got to go. Have you looked at the Polyform project licenses? They're a set of source available licenses. Okay, would you hire a legal consultation to double check your license? Would you consult good people and respected in the community? And do you commit to your answer?
I think we already have hired.
No, I lie about everything I say. I commit
people.
to nothing. What the fuck?
We have hired great lawyers. So yeah, Andre.
Yeah. I mean, the thing that we need to do is, it's not even so much the legal part of it, but how do you, essentially, trying to legislate or regulate don't be an asshole is very difficult. So,
It's
for the
impossible.
commercial use thing, how do you, for instance, just the idea of forking. So, if somebody wants to fork this project, if somebody wants to fork it and they have a donation button on their page, or they fork,
yeah.
Versus.
I mean, look, the ultimate dilemma here is you're not gonna be able to win this without a little bit of a stick, right? We're gonna have to be able to beat back Microsoft and Apple, or just scammers in the India who put our apps. We need some sort of stick to succeed. And how do you make a stick that can't be taken by somebody else and to do evil? Yeah. I mean, this is Lord of the Rings is about this. It's just hard.
Yeah, I had a company that failed, and this is a good use case, because somebody's saying, what if we want to fork the software? Nobody's going to want, if you go under, we're not going to be able to fork it and hire good developers if we're not allowed to do that. So, let's say you had a clause in a license that said, if Futo goes bankrupt, then, after Futo goes bankrupt, then you can fork it. I had a company that probably should have went bankrupt 13 years ago, and I just didn't file bankruptcy because I just didn't file, and I just moved on. So let's say you just don't file bankruptcy, but you stop working. Like, there's so many ways to get around it. It's very difficult to legislate don't be an asshole, and we don't want to be an asshole. We don't want to screw ourselves, and it's very difficult to, like, we have to figure out a framework for that before we have something that we can actually give a lawyer and say, turn this into something that's legally binding, get rid of my fourth grade writing or rambling in it, or like what we've put in it. And that's the difficult part. We do want to come up with something that has, what's the word to use? Exit valve. That's
Safety valve.
I need to get lunch. Yeah, we want a safety valve to be there so that people reading this license can see that there's not a rug pull coming. But like that's, I don't know if
yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like I said, if I get murdered in something or like Futo dissolves because of that, please do whatever you want with our software, and like also go find the person who murdered me. Yeah,
Thank you,
I mean,
Paul.
we have. I mean, the anti-cheat thing is actually, look, things are getting worse. Like this is why we have to put distance between us and kind of the open source, because things have just been getting worse and worse and worse and worse. And part of it is like, yeah, they're trying to take over the computers like at the lowest level in like the board, like require code signing to get anything onto it. Like, and yeah, they'll use like anti-cheat as the excuse, right? Like that's actually really hard to, like they used to jailbreak iPhones all the time. It's getting really hard to do that. They used to jailbreak things like the PlayStations, and those are getting harder to do. And they're always going to like have their they're going to say, oh, we need to have anti-cheat, or we need to have, make it so that, stupid users can't accidentally, install a virus on there. It's like, well, you have to respect, like the users who don't want that control, fine. They can cede that control, but there should be ways for people who don't want Apple to have complete control over their computer to run it themselves. Okay.
What made this billionaire so pissed at proprietary software that you started this instead of putting all your money into Exxon or some shit? Like, what?
Well, let's see. I mean, there's probably two things. One was I really hated Microsoft in the 90s. I wouldn't really know what it was. I mean, I was very young, but like I didn't like that the Amiga failed. I thought it was a better computer, so that pissed me off. But the thing that really, really kind of pissed me off was, when Apple came along and started telling me as a software developer that I used to always just be able to write software for people and they could put them on their computers. And then Apple comes along in 2009 and says, okay, anybody who owns an iPhone, we have to approve your software before anybody who buys one of our phones can run your software. And yeah, like that, to me, that's just unacceptable. Like we shouldn't have big companies inserting themselves between, the whole point of the internet, the whole point of the internet is that we can talk to each other. Our computers can talk to each other. Anybody can have a relationship with anybody else. And when you start telling a software developer that they need Apple's approval to write an app,
And have a 30% troll toll.
yeah, and the 30%, yeah, it's just unacceptable.
The fact that it's not even the troll toll, it's the fact that they can say whether or not your application is allowed to go to users. Mm-hmm. Even when it comes to a phone, like this is a computer, it's not a phone.
Yeah.
If you told somebody on a desktop computer you cannot install an operating system of your choice, and I get to say what programs you install on it, people would lose their mind. They go insane.
Yeah.
Actually, you know what? I take that back. I'm very deathly afraid that I'm so old and out of touch that if you told people you could only install Windows in this computer and you could only install the programs we say, I seriously am afraid that there's enough of society that would go along with it.
And every single influential open source organization is going along with it, except for Futo.
So a bunch of people are saying this is wrong. They should have just used GPL. So I think people who are new to here don't understand. The difference is we want the ability, if there's, an Android phone distributor that says we want to include this piece of software, we have an unlimited free trial. But we want people to pay for the software. Like we don't want to have software that abuses you. But the idea is for engineers to get paid, people have to pay for the software. So if somebody decides we want to put this software on 20 million devices, we would like to be able to get a fee for that, a discount fee. Like similarly to how Microsoft with Windows gives Dell a discount for a license key for 1 million computers, we would want the ability to do that with our software, which GPL does not provide us. The current licenses do not allow us to set a term for commercial use. But the alternative to that right now is proprietary software where you can't see the source code at all, so you have no idea if you're being spied on, abused, or anything like that. So the middle that we want is you can see everything your computer is doing. If we make a client, you get the server. No cloud, no required cloud nonsense, no spyware, no crypto shit, but we want the ability to make money on it. And that current license doesn't do that. Now, the other question, what you said flows into that one, is okay, what do you think is wrong with open source in general? Like, for instance, every time I see this, people will bring up like, okay, look, Apache runs the internet, the Linux kernel runs the internet. There's all these open, like the Android open source project is open source. I would imagine your response to that would be something along the lines of like the consumer-facing software is all proprietary shit, even if that stuff runs the internet.
Yeah, I mean, I remember, I remember my dad would always be complaining about Windows in 2000, and I'd be like, oh, why don't you just run Linux? I run Linux, right? And it's like this kind of like arrogant. I was being arrogant and kind of selfish then because like I could do that. So I think a lot of what's happened with open source people is like they have kind of gotten something to work for them. And then they just kind of stop there. They don't actually think about like, oh, how do I get 1 billion people who aren't stuck, right? How do I get it so 2 billion people aren't stuck? They don't take it to the next level. So that's the, I think that's, that's what we're trying to change. And like as far as like why nobody else has done this until now, I think people have tried and failed, and maybe will fail too. But I think what I'm trying to do more than anything is get the financial incentives there, so that I do think that a good programmer can often just kind of get in the weeds and be like, hey, this is cool. Like I solved like this hard conceptual problem and it was fun. Oh, and now like polishing this for, 1 billion users, that's not fun. I'm going to go do something new now. And then so who's going to polish that for 1 billion users? It's going to be a big company that can pay people lots of money.
But then goes from do no evil to spying on everything you do.
Yeah.
If you say you think open source has lost, and then they'll say, well, no, the Linux kernel runs the internet, Apache runs the internet. Look at all these pieces of open source software that people use every day. How many feature-length films have been recorded or edited using Kdenlive? I mean, for all these different professional use cases or niche use cases, like even when I use Nextcloud, if I want to have an alternative to the Google Apps, like Nextcloud is the next best thing if I want open source. When I'm scrolling through photos in the Nextcloud app, not the Photos app, but like the stock Nextcloud one, the file, I showed you, the file name stays the same as you scroll. It's like for a lot of consumer-facing stuff, it's like it hasn't won.
Yeah, I mean,
if
what percentage of text messages are sent on Signal on a de-Googled Android phone? Less than like 1/1000%.
Yeah.
Like so that's why I say like if open source is winning, that number goes up to 10%, 20%. Something more reasonable, something that can be reasonably called successful.
Do you have any plans to make Grayjay function on other platforms? I run Linux and I only watch YouTube from the browser.
Yes.
Desktop app, yes, that's
Yes.
a work in progress.
Very soon.
This is BS. Argy2CMS, for example, is a GPL software, but the original author owns the rights and is offering commercial licenses for inclusion in proprietary software. I believe the GPL does not allow you to require.
Yeah, you're allowed to do it. I mean,
you can charge, but you're not. But you're not allowed to require.
Christian is correct, but what we're saying with our license is that we want a little bit more of a stick for when people decide to basically, rip us off.
Yeah, he's saying for inclusion in proprietary software. We're saying commercial use. Because I think that GPL license says you can't, if you want to use this in your
I don't think that's quite.
No, that's a different use case because the idea of if you have proprietary software, you're making your own software. GPL allows you to say, you can't use this in a particular piece of proprietary software. We're saying even if you are making a piece of open source software, like we're saying if you want to take our application and use it commercially, not take our code and put it into your application, but even if you're simply going to take our application and let's say bundle it with 50,000 Android phones, that we would want to get paid for that. And that's a different use case altogether.
Yeah, I believe there's differences here.
There's two different sticks. So you can sell GPL, but you can't impose commercial restrictions.
Yeah, exactly. You're allowed to sell GPL, but you don't really have a stick.
Sorry, guys, this all seems so shady. I know you have the best intentions, but we still need the free alternatives to your software. We want to have a free as in freedom computing experience. At that point, I would just say use something else.
Yeah, I mean,
use the stock, use the stock YouTube.
Yeah, if you think we're shady, I mean, it's like, look,
use Google Photos.
If you're worried that we're shady, I mean, do your own thing. my hope is that the people who trust us are going to be rewarded with a great, they're going to be rewarded if they trust us, unlike you, they're going to be rewarded with great software and no rug pulls and just a constant, dedication towards quality software.
Yeah, like I strongly disagreed with using the word open source to describe this. And obviously I disagreed massively with that rug pull clause being in there. And like, because I bothered you every single week about that. And then eventually every single day. But
I don't
the
even
idea
remember this hardly, but I believe you. I believe you, but I also believe that I was checked out.
I need my audience to promise they're not going to listen to your request from earlier. Remember that if somebody kills me, figure out who did it?
Which request?
Remember that if somebody kills me, figure out who did it?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, don't do that. Don't do that. Anyway,
The
point of it,
yeah.
but like the whole idea of like this is shady because you want to make money. Like the entire concept of shady is you're doing something where other people can't see. It's not transparent. You're trying to do something behind people's backs. So if we're telling you we want to be able to charge for our software to be used commercially, you're literally able to see the source code to every application we've written. We're doing the opposite of trying to do something in private. Like we're not doing something behind closed doors. Google Photos and Google Drive took a customer's photos and sent them over to the police because it was a mother holding her child. No, first what happened was he had to take a picture of his son for the doctor, and this was during COVID, so he couldn't physically visit a doctor. And then the person who was moderating this decided, okay, let's see what their other photos are just to check if this is, a PEXT3 thing going on, so this video doesn't get age restricted. If he, just make sure he's not a P word. And they see a picture of the mother holding the son, and she had her top off in the bed. And then they said, okay, that was the smoking gun, so let's send this to the police. So somebody at Google thought, a breastfeeding mother, that must be a P file. To me, like that's shady. Like you can't see what they're doing. You cannot run your own server for Google Photos. You have to use theirs. You have no idea what they're doing. With us, if you want to use this software, you see exactly what the source code is. You can see exactly what we're doing. We're telling you what we're doing, but we're not telling you to trust what we're doing. You can literally see it. So, I understand completely if somebody disagrees and says, I don't like this. How dare you charge for commercial use when you're spending millions of dollars on engineers and getting like 1 or 10% return? I can understand if you don't like that, but at the same time, like to call it shady just seems fundamentally dishonest. And what do you think?
Yeah, like I said, like you'll be missing out.
And that's even a bad example.
You'll be missing out. Like all the people who do trust us are going to have great stuff.
That's not even a good example because all of our software doesn't even use this. Like images AGPL. Okay, that was a bad example. But like the point of the matter is like if somebody, the whole concept of being shady is that you're doing something behind closed doors. And like there's nothing behind closed doors.
Again, like I'm going to come back to it. Like to win this battle, we do need a bit of a stick. And there's always going to be like, oh my God, this person has this stick now. I can't trust this person to have this stick. There's no way around that. We can't just like take the ring to Mount Doom and throw it in. Like we gotta get our own stick to beat Google and Apple and Facebook and everybody with.
Yeah, like I completely understand somebody saying I don't like this and not wanting to support it. Just don't call it something it's. Ironically, don't call it something it's not. Like that, it's like I would pull the Seinfeld there and say now they would say now you know how we feel.
He's asking about Telegram. That's an interesting one.
When you click so Aaron's the type of person that notices when you click on a user for a chat that it loads 40 milliseconds faster than Signal, and you actually notice this shit.
Yeah, so I would say Telegram is the gold standard for how first and foremost, apps need to be delightful and they need to like work well. And like when you want something to happen, it happens within milliseconds and it doesn't freeze up. So Telegram is just kind of the gold standard in that sense. People need to know that Telegram does not have encrypted group chats and is not encrypted by default on one-to-one conversations. So it's not as encrypted as you would like it to be. But I think we aspire to have things as successful as Telegram, but also even better in terms of respecting your computer sovereignty.
Do you think that Telegram succeeds over Signal in terms of users? Like when I say succeed, to be clear, I'm talking about number of total users here. Do you think it succeeds over Signal because of marketing, or do you think it's because of the ease of use that if I install Telegram on my computer and then my phone, I can see all my past conversations because it's not intended to be
the ease of use is so key. This The ease of use is a huge thing, and I believe that's true. Like the reason, there's lots of little details here of like why when you have something as well encrypted as Signal, you don't get quite as good usability out of it.
Okay, this is actually an excellent one. This is from Christian, and I think I was a little harsh on him before, so my apologies on that. It was, imagine this, I start supporting you, and I do that for years. I give you even more than I'd give for any proprietary subscription. And one day you turn evil because the license allows you? What then? So I guess the first thing I would ask is if you look at the Grayjay now technically with the original temporary license, the reason that I pushed so hard against that is because it did have that clause in it that I'm not an Adobe PR. I don't know how to do like public relations shit. It's like I call it a rug pull clause. Like that in there said we could revoke access to the code at any time. That's unacceptable. That's gone. So the only thing that I see in that license that would be a point of contention is regarding commercial use. So if we've been paying, so firstly, we don't have give you for any proprietary subscription. So when you say give, do you mean, are you talking about contributing your own code to this? And then after like you've contributed code for 5 years, then we just say, well, you can't use it for commercial use kind of thing? Or are you talking about us screwing you by not allowing you to use the software, by telling you it's not going to work anymore? Because I'm trying to figure out what the attack vector is there. I'm not trying to catch you in a gotcha, but if the software allows you to have an infinite trial period, you have the source code, and you have essentially an honor system DRM if I already paid, how would I be able to screw you, I guess is my question. Because this would actually help me make this license better and also address people's concerns if there is a specific attack vector you believe exists on how we could screw you. I understand what you're saying, but I don't see how the current license we have would actually allow me to screw you. But I do want to.
I mean, I think it's like I wouldn't treat this stuff so seriously. That's my advice. When I'm talking about this stuff, I mean the actual license stuff. Obviously, it's their legal documents and potentially something. I don't know. It's what's going to matter more. You're going to feel more betrayed by us if we just kind of start being douchebags. Like I'm sure we can find lawyers to like work around whatever like promises we make if we really had to. Like these things don't. These things only work as far as I would say I always like to say trust individuals, not institutions. So if Lewis ever gets mad at what we're doing and quits and tells you all to stop trusting Futo, listen to him. If I ever leave Futo, maybe you should get concerned then too. Like that's I don't think too much about if the reading every single word carefully in the license is
very different about trust.
Exactly.
If I quit and I say don't trust here, I say don't trust me, but don't trust me on Futo. Just don't trust me on anything. Okay, this is a good one. I'm a total GPL zealot. Oh God, I need to get lunch. I'm a total GPL zealot, and I still think it's really dumb that people think Futo can't be trusted. I don't like the software not being Libra, but I would use it over Microsoft or Google any day. And I guess the point there is, okay, what I was talking about doesn't apply to Image because it is a GPL. And by the way, just to point out here, we do have software that we released that isn't even under this license. Like we do have, a fair amount of GPL software that we've given to and used.
Just like we're actually treating Futo like a Silicon Valley company in the sense of how we're organized legally. Even though we're not going to abuse our customers, we use a lot of GPL stuff, and we have a lot of GPL projects, just like Google does.
Yeah, there was a person.
That's why I just want to say open source is not solving this problem. Google has all this open source everywhere, right? And Google has all these open source projects. It's what Futo does that's going to solve this problem.
Yeah, one of the interesting things is what was I saying? Oh, yeah, somebody said, I don't like that Grayjay has this license. I'm purposely not going to use it instead. And then I commented, what are you using right now? And he goes, YouTube Vanced. And it's it's one of those things where you're using a piece of software that is essentially a I would consider it semi-cracked version of the YouTube application. Okay, which one is giving you more free? Again, instead of having this binary thinking, which one is giving you more freedom? The application that lets you see every single piece of source code, or the application that's essentially a cracked version of the stock YouTube app? So that was really difficult for me to understand. Okay, I'm going to keep using YouTube Vanced because of the license that you have, and it's what is the license of the software that you're using?
Yeah, I think people are just getting hung up on these minutia that honestly don't matter. Yeah,
YouTube Vanced. Yeah, I like YouTube Vanced. I've used it before. I've used it's not bad software, but it's just not it's. Are we supposed? Let's see. There was a post in the subreddit for Grayjay questioning why there was a merchandise ad. and people were hostile to the user who mentioned it. Oh, that's a great question. So when it comes to, we said that we are not putting ads into our application. So what we do allow with the identification application is I can make my own profile page. So the problem right now is, let's say I get deleted off of YouTube. When you subscribe to me in Grayjay, you're subscribing to me, essentially. You're subscribing to me on a sovereign identity system called Polycentric that we're going to be talking about more as time goes on, so that if I get deleted from Twitch or YouTube or any, or Rumble or Odyssey or any of these platforms, when you click me, you will still get you will still get notifications from my videos in your feed from wherever else that I'm posting them. And more importantly, that profile page that I create, that's there regardless of whether I get to. That's not a YouTube profile page. It's not going to be a Twitch profile page. And part of that, we do want creators to support themselves through this. So I have an ability to link my own website on my profile page. So on my profile page that I make in the software, I can put links to my website, I can put links to other stuff, but that's not an advertisement that's embedded in the software. That's, if you click on the profile page of a creator, you can see whatever that creator decides to put on their page. But that's not like ads inside the application. I'm not sure if that's exactly what you're asking, but that's the only place where you're going to see merchandise inside of Grayjay right now, to my understanding. Yeah, so like I have a donation link, and then I have a link to my personal website. Hey, yeah, sure, by adding ads, for example, and nobody forking the project because they can't fund the development. Also, for code contributions like what Red Hat does, I do trust you, but I trusted Red Hat too, laughing my ass off. Okay, I understand that. Point taken. So the license that we have doesn't say that you cannot modify the source code. It simply says if you want to do that commercially. So let's say that we screw you over by putting advertisements in the application, and you don't like that. You can modify that application. You can modify it, and after you've modified it, you can essentially use it without ads. If you're not a programmer, you can ask a programmer to modify it and not have ads. And what we're saying is, as long as you have the payment link for our company in there, so as long as when somebody goes to buy it, that goes to our account. As long as you are still linking to us in the payment section, you could have a programmer essentially take that software, remove that. He could offer that on his he could offer the version without ads on his website. So that again comes back to what I said about, like, I was saying don't trust. He says trust people, not individuals, but not institutions. I say don't trust institutions or people, trust the process. So if you read the license, you could fork the software, you could remove the ads from it, and that person could continue to put it on his website. He could, as long as you're not selling it. That's what we're saying. But yeah, if we put ads in the software, fucking remove them. Like, you should remove them. We don't want to have a do no evil clause, because Aaron you have in your 5 pillars, one of them is no ads, no trackers, no spyware, no customer is the product as a business model. Let's say you delete that. Hypothetically, let's say you deleted that. If that happens, you could just take the source code, remove it, or have a programmer remove it, and he'll, have grayjaywithoutads.com or something, and pretty much, yeah. That would be, what would you answer that as?
Which exact question?
Oh, he said, I asked him, what do you mean by, I don't like this license because what if I don't want to trust you, what if you screw me over?
The Red Hat guy, yeah.
And he said, sure, by adding ads and nobody forking.
We're to be honest, we're not super keen on code contributions anyway. We're basically, it's the reason why open source is important to us is that you can see the source code. So we're not actually looking at. This is Christian again. We're not actually looking at. We do appreciate some of the contributions and stuff, but we're not going to define our success by how well we get the outside world to contribute. We're going to judge our success by, how polished we can make the projects by paying engineers here to polish them.
Oh, okay. I apologize. I gave you the politician's answer. I answered a portion of your question without answering the main portion of your question. My bad. So this included nobody forking the project because they cannot fund the development. That's a good one. So let's say that we screwed, again, you were saying hypothetically, let's say we screw over a piece of people on a piece of software that's 10,000 users. This is not a perfect answer to your question, but to my knowledge, the person who developed uBlock Origin, who's essentially a hero for blocking ads on everything, which is what you recommend people do and what I recommend people do all the time too, that person, he won't even accept donations. There's not even a donation link on his page. I believe that embedding ads in software is probably easy enough to remove that you would not need to have a team of around-the-clock engineers to do that. Because think about it, the people that are removing ads from YouTube Vans, they're literally, to my knowledge, they're doing this for free. It's just people that want to crack it. They're cracking closed source software to do that. I imagine somebody out there, if this software has the source code essentially for anybody to read, would find out how to remove the ads. And I also think we're probably like 1 year away from just copy paste the source code in the chat GPT and like say where the ad is and have you delete it. So that's not a perfect answer for you, but I think it is a better answer than if we said you cannot fork this at all. If anybody offers a forked version of our software, you get in trouble. Like, if somebody wants to remove the ads, they can remove the ads. I guess what you would be trusting there is not trusting me. You would have to trust that in the community, there's somebody out there that would be pissed off enough that we lied to you that they would go out of their way to do this for free for spite. And if there's anything that drives the online community, it's being told by an authority figure that you can't do something or doing something wrong. Like, the reason I've showed thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people how to fix Apple products for free and given that is I never believed this channel, my YouTube channel, would make money. If you look at my early videos, like they're just all dog shit. It was about giving a middle finger to an authority figure. I think that there's somebody out there that would give a middle finger to us if we put ads in our software by removing the source code. And I guess I'm being a little cocky there by saying I believe that an average programmer should probably be 10 or 20 minutes of their time to do that. What do you think?
Again, it's minutia.
Yeah, like for me, a big part of it when I tell people to use ad block on everything, it's just a protest. Because like my bank told me the other day, it's not even they told me via email. I didn't get to figure this out via email. You get to figure this out via their press release news page. They're advertising to other people that you have the option to see what people purchased on their credit cards, and that you can use, like, you can advertise on their bank website based on what they bought. It's like, really? So, if I gamble, like if they saw I gambled once and I'm a gambling addict, they could just show me ads for that. It's like, to me, that's disgusting. And it's so pervasive. It's so to the point where it's almost everywhere.
Oh shit, they killed our video.
No, it was a...
Oh.
Yeah. No, the battery died.
Oh, okay.
That was already done. It's so pervasive at this point that I want to boycott the entire concept of advertising as a business model. But anytime I do that for something that I'm consuming, I want to find another way to pay you, but I'm not going to do it with ads. I don't want to deal with ads anymore. I'll pay you. I'm happy to pay you, but this whole like customer is the product business model has to go. And I don't think it's going to go until there's enough of an incentive for it to go. And the way that it goes is when advertisers don't make money anymore. Like, is that a lofty goal? Yes, it is. But at the very least, there's one person that they're not going to make money off of. Will Grayjay allow in-app donations to creators? That goes back to what I was talking about before about people having their own page. So I have my own page on there, and people can either buy from my website or use my donation page. We are not going to be the conduit there, like the middleman for donations. You put up whatever system that you want to put up, whether it's a Stripe link, PayPal link, crypto link, whatever you want. But you would be the person who's adjusting your own page. And we want to release a user interface for that makes it easier than it is now. And that's something we're regularly working on. Yeah, okay, this is a good one. If your biggest concern is engineers being paid for their time and contribution, would you put out source bounties?
We've talked about that. Yeah, it's something we've talked about.
Yeah, there's many times you said if somebody could create something on the level of X, we would want to hire you.
Yeah.
You've talked about putting bounties. We didn't explore it fully, but you've said if somebody, one of the things you wanted to do. So we have a fellowship program where, if you have an interesting piece of cool software, we'll give you a certain amount of money and housing here to show up for 3 months and just work on your project. But one thing we were interested in doing for that is not just having you work on your project, but if it's cool, which is how we met Alex for the keyboard project. It's also, what if we had a bounty for fellowships for the specific things that we thought were cool? Like, that was something that we were thinking about.
Yeah, I mean, and Telegram actually has done this with bounties. So we're looking at it.
Everybody that I've talked to so far about these things has usually been happy. Like, I remember I showed up in the image Discord and I said, like, they had the same reaction. I think there was one dude, I'm never going to stop laughing. It's just like, it seems like you would be an ass to work, miserable to work for or something. And I honestly said, like, true. You're technically correct.
Oh, how embarrassing.
No, it was like something like, yes. No, because it was perfect timing. Yes. I'm like, you're not wrong. But the thing is, like, when you originally called me, I think I was like, we just like, what would you do with $1 million for right to repair? It's like, hang up the phone. Like, I think that's what I said, something like that. Because it's like, people think that that's too good to be true. It's like, my number is public and somebody sent me that. That's insane. But yeah, so far, the people that have spoken to us believe, I believe, how do I put this? They've been happy with the fairness of the conversation. I'll leave it at that. But yeah, we would want somebody to talk to us over that. And again, you don't have to talk to us if you want to buy the software and use it. We cannot take it away from you after you've purchased it. And there's no ability to do that. But for commercial use, we would want people to have a conversation. But whatever conversation we have, you wouldn't have to trust us after it. You would just say yes or no to the options that we present to you. Like, there's a contract, you would sign it. And oh, here's a good one. What if people want to include the demo version of the software device? So we were talking about bundling. Let's say somebody wants to bundle something we have with 1 million phones. But like, what if somebody wants to bundle it, but they want to bundle it without having clicked the button, I already paid? Because that's a weird one. Because like, on one hand, I think your average user that gets
yeah,
it.
I think we would like that. Yeah,
Wait, so you would like that
I think we would just give them permission to do that.
okay, without
Yeah.
paying.
Yeah.
Because it's weird. Because on
Yeah,
one
I
hand,
mean, it's
99.
like free distribution. That's really good for us.
Yeah, like okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
I almost would have assumed the opposite because if I get an application on my phone and it already works and it was bundled with it, I'm going to assume I already paid for it. Kind of like I don't know how many people would buy it after. However, if you're seeing it as, but technically, if they could download free
Maybe
anyway,
we would want to add some extra text to make it so that confusion doesn't happen.
but you would be okay with
Yeah.
this. Yeah, okay, that's
Yeah.
cool because I would assume if I buy a phone, whatever came with it, if it already works, I just assume I paid for it already, like it's free.
No, have you never gotten that crapware on your Windows where it's like, oh, here's your antivirus, and you have like one free month or whatever, and then
What's
you have
Windows?
to start paying.
What's a Windows?
Yeah.
Well, I can see the source first license being really awesome for user-facing applications. What could libraries do to get income from commercial use through their other applications? That's a good one because like a lot of people will even. Okay, it's hard enough getting people to pay for open source software in general. Like how many
Yeah.
people pay? People paying for Kden Live is almost like people paying for WinRAR. Like it doesn't happen. So, but libraries are even worse because they don't. A lot of people who are end users, they don't even know what the libraries are in their application. Like I don't know what the
Yeah.
libraries are. So how do you deal with that?
I don't think we have an answer. It's something that we've been talking about a decent amount, trying to have a good answer for that. You know, there are things you can do. You know, I mean, if you wanted to just have a proprietary license that, you know, anybody, I mean, I guess with source first, I think you probably could. Let me think this through. You know, I think whoever's like, if somebody is trying to charge money for their app and I'm using a library for somebody else who has a source first license, I would make a deal with the person who gives me the library and they get a piece, right? So if I'm making $5 per seat on my software, they can get 50 cents of that.
All right, that's about that. If you have questions, just email him. He always answers. Yeah, Lewis@futo.org. If you spell my name right and you spell the organization name right, you get it. Futo.org, not Futa. I know what you're going to say, Paul. I set up this software so that I can see like when people talk about, talk about the company on forums. It's like a search. And I've been telling you, like, you have no idea. For my company, it's like, okay, when do people talk about Rossman Repair Group on this forum so I could kind of see what people's feedback is? Like, that's easy. Like, I search for this. You have no idea how much. I see balls or no balls showing up, like, on every other comment. Because, like,
I did not even know this was a thing.
market research,
until
man. Market
like
research.
3 years ago.
One vowel is there's one vowel between you and complete destruction, complete annihilation. The one thing is, anytime somebody asks that about us, I always answer balls.
Okay.
I think that's
Yeah,
balls.
I think I like balls too.
Balls?
Balls.
I like balls too. With
Yes.
that, I'm going to end the video. All right. See ya.